Some men build empires on sweat and soil. Others inherit them and spend the rest of their lives poisoning the roots. This is the story of how I took back the original 40 acres from a man who believed the land, the wine, and even his own daughter belonged to him by divine right. It begins, like all good revenges, with dust, old paper, and a clause no one had bothered to read in 48 years. The air in the old cellar beneath the original 1978 winery smelled of wet stone, oak, and forgotten time. I was 39 years old, 6 years into my marriage to Isabella Hargrove, and 4 years into my role as general manager of Hargrove Family Vineyards. Julian Hargrove, 76, barrel-chested, silver-haired, and convinced the sun rose each morning only after he approved the weather, had hired me because his daughter threatened to leave the family entirely if he didn't. He called me the city boy for the first 3 years, then the vineyard husband when I started turning a profit. Never once did he call me by my name, Daniel Whitaker, in public. On a cold, rainy afternoon in late February, I was searching for the original fermentation logs from 1982. I needed them for a retrospective label we were launching. Instead, my hand brushed against a thick, warped manila folder wedged behind the hanging files in the far cabinet. The tab read, Hargrove Vineyards Inc., Founding Documents, 1978. Original articles and shareholder agreements. I sat on an overturned barrel and opened it. Buried on page 63, section 17, subsection F, the Founder's Protection Clause, written in my late father-in-law's grandfather's careful hand. Any family member by blood or marriage who has rendered continuous full-time service to Hargrove Vineyards for 7 or more years, and is thereafter terminated without documented just cause shall be granted. A perpetual ownership of the original 40 acres, the home block, including all structures thereon, and B, 18% of the annual net profits of the entire Hargrove estate, payable quarterly in perpetuity. I read it 7 times. Then I photographed every page with my phone, sealed the folder exactly as I'd found it, and walked out into the rain like a man carrying nitroglycerin in his coat pocket. That night in the small stone cottage on the edge of the property that Julian still called the guest house, even though we'd lived there 6 years, I showed Isabella. She read the clause once, slowly. Then she looked up at me with eyes that had carried 28 years of quiet fury. He has never read the full original documents, she whispered. Grandpa wrote it after Dad tried to push him out in 1989. Dad only ever reads the summaries his lawyers give him. She set the phone down and took my hands. 7 years, she said. We make him fire you the day after you hit 7. And then we take the heart of his empire. Julian Hargrove was a man who measured love in barrels produced and loyalty in how low you bowed. He had married Isabella's mother, Claire, in 1982, then spent the next 26 years systematically breaking her spirit with public corrections, private contempt, and a revolving door of younger women who understood the business. Claire died of cancer when Isabella was 23. Julian gave the eulogy and called her a good support staff. Isabella never forgave him. She stayed close only to protect the legacy her grandfather had actually built, the vines, the soil, the name. I had met her at a wine auction in Atlanta. I was a hospitality consultant. She was the heir pretending she didn't hate her bloodline. We fell in love fast and hard. When she got pregnant with our son, Luca, Julian's response was, "At least it's a boy, maybe he'll have some Hargrove in him." We moved to the vineyard after Luca turned 1. I worked my way up from assistant winemaker to GM while documenting everything. For the next 3 years after finding the clause, we played the longest, most elegant game of psychological chess imaginable. I made the vineyard more profitable than it had ever been. New varietals, precision irrigation. Direct-to-consumer sales that bypassed the old distributors Julian loved. Awards poured in. Wine Spectator, James Suckling, even a feature in Decanter. Julian took all the credit in public. In private, he said that the city boy was getting noticed. I stopped laughing at his crude jokes. I questioned his decision to spray aggressively on the home block. I arrived at 8 o'clock a.m. and left at 5 o'clock p.m. exactly, unheard of in his 24/7 empire. I documented every passive-aggressive remark, every denied budget, every time he overruled me in front of staff. Isabella played the perfect daughter, hosting dinners, smiling at his rants, while secretly recording conversations on her phone and feeding him just enough doubt about my loyalty. Luca, at 10 years old, started calling his grandfather Mr. Julian after hearing him call me the help one too many times. The pressure built like fermentation in a sealed tank. Year 6 bled into year 7. I implemented a new sustainability program that cut water usage by 40% and won us national press. Julian hated it because it reduced his ability to host lavish, old-school client parties with cigars and guns. I promoted 3 women to head winemaker and cellar master roles. Julian's face turned purple when I announced it at the annual harvest dinner. One crisp October morning, during a staff meeting, he finally snapped in front of 30 people. "You think you run this place now, city boy? You forget whose name is on the gate," I answered calmly. "The name is Hargrove. I'm just trying to make sure it still means something in 20 years. The room went silent. Julian's jaw worked like an old press crushing grapes. That night he told Isabella I was getting ideas above my station. She smiled sweetly and said, "Maybe he's just better at this than you expected, Dad." The countdown to 7 years was now weeks away. Harvest 2025 was perfect: warm days, cool nights, perfect ripeness. We finished picking the home block on October 17th. I had officially hit 7 years and 4 days of continuous service that morning. Julian chose the annual harvest gala, held on the lawn overlooking the original 40 acres, to make his move. 300 guests, critics, distributors, local politicians, the press. I was giving the toast when he interrupted, mic in hand, drunk on his own importance and 3 bottles of his favorite Cabernet. "Enough, Whitaker. This isn't your show, your staff. You've always been staff. You married my daughter, got her pregnant, and thought that bought you a throne. Well, the throne is mine. You're done. Fired. Get off my property." Gasps, phones came out. Security moved toward me. I looked at him steadily. "As you wish, Julian." Isabella stepped forward in her emerald gown, calm as winter frost. "Security, stand down," she said, voice carrying. "This is still a family matter." Julian sneered. "You're choosing him over blood." "No, Dad," she said softly. "I'm choosing the family Grandpa actually loved, the one you spent your life trying to destroy." We walked out together, Luca between us, while the entire valley watched. The termination letter arrived by courier the next morning. No cause listed, just effective immediately. Our attorney, Victoria Lang, the same shark from half a dozen similar family wars, filed the claim within 48 hours. The emergency board meeting was held in the old tasting room on the home block itself. Julian sat at the head of the table, flanked by his lawyers and 2 terrified cousins who held minor shares. Victoria placed the original 1978 documents in front of every person. Julian's face went the color of spoiled must. "You can't be serious. That clause is ancient." "It's never been enforced." "It's enforceable," Victoria said. "Your father wrote it specifically to stop exactly the kind of behavior you've displayed for decades." Isabella stood. "You belittled my mother until the day she died," she said, voice never rising. "You called her weak in front of guests. You paraded women through her house while she was dying. You told me I was a disappointment for loving a man you didn't choose. You called my husband a parasite for 6 years while he made this place more successful than you ever did alone." She looked at the board. "He fired my husband one day after 7 years of service, on stage, in public, with 0 documented cause. The clause is clear. The original 40 acres and 18% of all profits belong to Daniel. Forever." The vote was 6-3. Julian screamed, he threatened, he cried, he offered bribes. None of it mattered. Julian fought in court for 19 months. He burned millions in legal fees. He tried to sell off pieces of the estate to avoid payments. The judge upheld the clause. We took ownership of the home block, the original 40 acres with the ancient vines, the first cellar, the stone house where Julian had grown up. We renamed it Claire's Keep after Isabella's mother. Within 2 years, our small, meticulous label, Claire's Keep Wines, started winning every major award. The 40-acre wines were more elegant, more pure, more honest than anything coming out of the expanded Hargrove estate. Staff began quietly leaving Julian's operation for hours. Distributors followed. By year 3, Julian was forced to sell a 51% stake in the main estate to a corporate wine group just to stay afloat. The man who once lorded over 800 acres now answered to hedge fund managers. He moved into a small house on the edge of what remained of his property, close enough to see our lights every night. Julian Hargrove died on a crisp October morning, exactly 5 years after the night he fired me. He left Isabella $1 and a note that read, "You chose wrong." She framed both. We still receive the quarterly profit distributions, 18% of an empire that continues to shrink while ours thrives. Luca, now 16, runs the tasting room on weekends. He pours the wine his grandfather once tried to deny him and tells guests, "This is the block my great-grandfather planted. My dad and mom saved it." Isabella and I sit on the porch of the old stone house most evenings, watching the vines turn gold in autumn. Sometimes we raise a glass toward the lights of the big estate in the distance, not in celebration, in quiet, complete satisfaction. 6 years of being called city boy, one forgotten clause. One arrogant man who thought soil and blood belonged only to him. One daughter who had kept score since she was 12. The land remembers, and now, so does he, wherever small men go when their kingdoms finally crumble. Epilogue: the wine from the original 40 acres is now one of the most sought after in California. Every bottle carries a small line on the back label, dedicated to Claire Hargrove and to the truth that some legacies are worth protecting from those who inherit them. If you liked this story, remember, the best revenge is patient, documented, and written into the fine print by someone smarter than the tyrant. The vines don't lie, and neither do old contracts.